air in the bunker was thick with tension, the kind that hung in the chest and made it hard to breathe. Outside, the blizzard raged on, its relentless fury a stark reminder of the merciless world waiting beyond the concrete walls. Snow and ice piled against the bunker door, sealing them inside as the wind howled like a mournful specter. Inside, the uneasy truce between the two groups held, but just barely. The room, though relatively spacious, felt suffocating with so many bodies and so much mistrust compressed into its walls. Every small movement drew eyes. Every noise turned heads. The men had settled into different corners, instinctively clustering with their own, but the invisible line separating them could still ignite at any moment. The German leader, seated near the stove with his team, kept his expression carefully neutral as he watched the other group. The British uniforms seemed foreign, like they didn't belong here, and yet here they were. Despite the fire crackling in the stove, the chill in the air hadn't abated. It wasn't the cold of the storm. It was the cold of shared silence, distrust, and unspoken hostilities. The first sign of trouble came over something as simple as food. A can of Spam had been placed on the table, its dented surface reflecting the orange glow of the fire. One of the German men eyed it warily, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of his knife as he spoke in German.
Das ist alles, was übrig bleibt?
He muttered, his tone low but unmistakably frustrated. The British soldier nearest to the table caught the glance and instinctively reached for the can, pulling it toward his side of the table.
You bloody Jerrys. We found this together. That means it's for all of us. So keep your Wiener Schnitzel fingers off of it before I take them off for ya. You got that?
He said, his voice sharp, the clipped tones of his English accent cutting through the room. The German leader stood, his body language calm but deliberate. He motioned for his man to stay quiet before walking to the table. He picked up the can, holding it between his gloved hands, and placed it back at the center of the table.
No one's eating unless we agree.
The British officer bristled but said nothing. The German leader's presence carried weight, not from volume, but from control. The others, both his men and the opposing group, seemed to take the signal and retreated slightly, though the tension lingered like the bitter cold in the air. By the third day in the bunker, the storm outside had shown no signs of relenting. Supplies had dwindled to nearly nothing. The firewood was reduced to a few scattered logs, and even the stove, their one source of warmth, had begun to fail them. The atmosphere had grown darker, edgier. The men spoke less, their conversations reduced to curt exchanges and occasional arguments. Every sound, the scrape of a boot on concrete, the clink of a rifle being shifted, seemed amplified, sharpening the unease that permeated the space. It was during one such moment that the truce nearly shattered. A German soldier had stood to stretch his legs, his rifle slung casually over his shoulder. His path inadvertently brought him closer to the corner where the British soldiers were gathered. A glance passed between him and one of the British soldiers, and in an instant the air changed.
Watch it!
The British soldier said, standing abruptly, his hand hovering near his weapon. The German stopped, his brow furrowing in confusion.
Entspann dich.
The British soldier didn't understand the words, but the tone was enough to set him off.
What the hell did you just say to me, you kraut fuck?
He snapped, his voice rising. The German soldier, not to be outdone, took a step forward.
Du bist so ein Idiot.
You just fucked up, you son of a bitch.
The British soldier's hand shot to his rifle and the German mirrored the movement. Within seconds, the room erupted into chaos. Voices shouting, boots scuffing against the floor as both sides moved to back their men. Rifles were cocked, barrels raised. The fragile peace shattered into pieces, replaced by the thunder of accusations and threats.
Enough. Stand down, all of you.
The German leader's voice boomed, silencing the room. He stepped forward, his rifle slung but his presence commanding. The British officer mirrored the German's movement, stepping between his men and the Germans.
He's right, men. Lower your weapons, now.
Slowly, reluctantly, the rifles were lowered, though the hands holding them remained tense and ready. The German leader looked to the British officer, meeting his gaze with an unspoken understanding. The incident had been a spark, and it wouldn't take much to ignite it again. Something had to be done.
This is not going to work if we're all armed. Close quarters, too much tension.
The British officer hesitated, his brow furrowed as he considered the insinuation.
What do you propose we do? Are you suggesting that we disarm? That's a lot of trust to ask for. You do realize that, don't you?
Not disarm, but neutralize. Weapons stay in the bunker, but away from everyone. Joint watch team. One man from each side on guard at all times.
With all due respect, sir, what are you thinking? We are at war. We cannot fucking disarm ourselves. Why do you keep listening to this, Jerry?
The room fell silent, the weight of the suggestion settling over them like the snow piling against the bunker walls. The German soldiers exchanged glances, their expressions wary. The British soldiers did the same, their distrust written across their faces.
May I speak to you in a more, shall I say, private setting?
Sure.
The two opposing officers retreated to an empty section of the room. The German leader began his elaboration.
Look, I know tensions are high. We are enemies at war. That much we know for sure. But this is the only way. Otherwise, the next time this happens, someone's not going to walk away. Maybe all of us. We both have a mission to fulfill, no? And no doubt it would be detrimental to both our homelands and the war effort if we were to fail in said missions. The answer is yes. Therefore, this proposition must be honored if we are to at least try and succeed in our respective tasks. What do you say? Truce for now, at least until we get out of here?
The British officer looked to his men, gauging their reactions. Finally, he gave a short nod.
Agreed. But remember, we both keep watch. So your men better not fuck this up, or else all bets are off and it's game on. You got that?
The German leader nodded, extending his hand.
It is as you say.
The British officer hesitated for only a moment before clasping it. The gesture was brief, almost mechanical, but it carried weight. The weapons were placed in a corner of the room, stacked neatly but within sight, much to the chagrin of the British men.
I just can't fucking believe this, sir! What are you thinking? Don't you see we are in a room full of krauts? I should just take my rifle and...
The British officer interrupted the soldier's disrespect by grabbing him by the shirt collar and slamming his back against the wall.
If you disrespect me again in front of the men, you can fuck around and find out. I know what I'm doing. Last time I checked, I was the superior and you were the subordinate. Try this again and I'll have you in front of a military tribunal. Now put your rifle into the pile like the rest. As a matter of fact, everyone put your pistols and knives in there as well.
The sour soldier reluctantly agreed, placing his weapons in the pile, as did everyone else. A German soldier and a British soldier took the first watch, their post near the rifles a silent reminder of the fragile peace. Outside, the storm's howl grew louder, the wind battering the bunker as though it could sense the unease inside. The snow continued to pile higher, sealing them further into their makeshift prison. The fire in the stove burned low, its glow casting long shadows across the room. The German leader sat near the fire, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. The sound of the storm outside was relentless, a constant reminder of their isolation. The truce had held for now, but the tension in the air remained, a coiled spring waiting to snap. The British officer sat across from him, his posture similarly tense. Neither man spoke, but their silence carried an understanding. They didn't trust each other, probably never would, but for now, survival came first. The storm showed no signs of relenting, and neither did the battle for trust.